Hi, thanks for joining us on our YouTube channel. My name's Father Bill Barron. I am the pastor of St. Mary's Church in Reynoldsville, Pennsylvania, and Assumption of the Blessed Virgin Mary Church in Sykesville, Pennsylvania. We're making a series of videos on the 14 Rules for Discernment of Spirits by St Ignatius of Loyola, and we are on the third rule. If you want to see the previous 4 videos, go through the channel and check out the previous 4 videos. In fact, it might be helpful because each video builds on the last one. So this video is about the third rule of discernment of spirits. So I'm going to read it to you. It goes like this. The third rule of spiritual consolation. I call it consolation when some interior movement in the soul is caused. So let's pause there. Consolation and desolation. These are the two different experiences that we have when we are moving through our spiritual life. So the next rule will deal with desolation. This rule deals with consolation. So what is consolation then? It's a personal experience of God's presence, and it's in the soul, a spiritual thing. It uses physical things as a means for us to experience it, but it's a spiritual movement. How else would we experience something in this world unless it has some type of physical manifestation, right? We need to experience things with our senses physically so that we can receive them spiritually. For example, the sacraments, right? And the Holy Church and Jesus, his own body in this world, but truly the Son of God in the Spirit. So consolation is a spiritual blessing, a spiritual movement in the soul, but it uses a physical means, okay? So we can divide consolation up in this third rule into 3 different sections to make this a little easier to understand. The first, we could call it awakening, okay? So it goes on here, consolation. An interior movement in the soul is caused through which the soul comes to be inflamed with love of its Creator and Lord. And when it can, in consequence, love no created thing on the face of the earth itself, but in the Creator of them all. So this is when we're growing in the spiritual life. You've probably experienced this, the sense of an awakening in your spirit. It's upwelling of the Spirit in kind of like shaking you out of your slumber. It's an awakening and an awareness, maybe for the first time, that there's more to life than just what we see and what we touch and hear, but rather there's something behind that. There's something that animates it, gives it purpose, and so on. And Ignatius says that we're becoming inflamed with love of our Creator and our Lord. This is as we begin to deepen our conversion and we receive kind of a new zeal to encounter God, and we feel the presence of God nearby maybe through the sacraments, maybe through music or sacred music, maybe even in the experience of the natural world and the beauty of nature, maybe through the love of a spouse or a significant other or a child or a friend or a neighbor or somebody who's reached out to us and is showing us about Jesus. So it's important always to realize that we want to love people and things, but it's better to love the God who loves through those people and those things, because God gives us the grace to love and to be loved. All of us are capable of being unloving and unlovely. But God transforms us from our unworthiness and makes us vessels of his love. And so this is a great consolation that Ignatius speaks about. Not loving things for their own beauty, but loving beautiful things because the God of beauty has animated that thing and has brought that person or thing as a vessel of his grace. So there's awakening, but then also a type of consolation which we could maybe call conviction, because it goes on here in the third rule. Likewise, when it sheds tears that move to love of its Lord, whether out of sorrow for one's sins, or for the passion of Christ our Lord, or because other things directly connected with his service and praise. So this is conviction. When we recognize maybe that there's, we get initially into Christ and into faith in Jesus, and then there's a deeper movement in the Spirit that says, I need to detach from love of, or obsession with, or preoccupation with this particular created thing, because it's such that it's become sinful, and I need to love those things in the light of Christ and not in a selfish way or an obsessive way, right? So we feel this conviction to lay down our vanities. You remember Ignatius laid down a lot of vanities in order to get to love Christ and to become a saint. And so when we see what Jesus did for us on the cross, we see the innocence and the love and the total self-sacrifice, even in the face of terrible fear and trembling on the part of Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane on Holy Thursday night, and the great injustice of the cross. But is given up, Jesus gave his whole life up for us. And when we just get moved by that and it stops us, and we get stopped, and we just have to think about and meditate upon, and maybe even shed a few tears upon that just wonderful love and the reality of it. Just the stark, unbelievable reality of the cross of Jesus. That's another way of, being convicted. I need to serve my Lord. What has he done for me? I need to do for him now. I need to stop being selfish and sinful. I need to trust in the Father's will. I need to maybe even pick up my own cross and follow Christ. That's a consolation. The third type of consolation I would describe, we had awakening, conviction. Third one I would give a label of inspiration. This is the last part of the third rule. Again, we're talking about spiritual consolation. Third rule of St Ignatius of Loyola. He finishes. Finally, I call consolation every increase of hope, faith, and charity, and all interior joy, which calls and attracts to heavenly things, and to the salvation of one's soul, quieting it and giving it peace in its Creator and Lord. Consolation can just simply be something in your soul, in your life, that is subtle. It inspires you, get moved to do something. God touches your heart to have more hope in your life, to not be as dominated by fear, to have great faith, and give more of your life into God's hands, and to have more charity, more love, and selflessness towards your neighbor. Forgiveness certainly is a part of that, right? Again, this is a personal thing. God moving within the spirit of the individual, attracted to the things of heaven and your own salvation, and giving you peace. So we've had those experiences too before. In discipleship, we feel moved to go and do something. We feel the presence of God putting a direction on our heart. Many of us who have gone to the seminary and answered a vocation, we felt that type of inspiration. People who have done great works of charity, like Mother Teresa, or some of the other great servants of God and charity, servants of the poor, have felt similar inspirations too. and you have maybe as well. Sometimes you just have a certain peace that you're supposed to do something, a certain peace moving in your life that you need to go talk or say a word to somebody, or go, help this particular person, or call this particular person, or reach out to them, or even start some big grand thing, some big grand outreach. That's a consolation too. So consolations can be big, huge experiences, big, big signs in one's life, or they could be just little everyday inspirations that you follow, and they take you in a good direction, right? When you find the spring and follow it, and then eventually you find the creek, God can inspire in big ways and small ways. So consolation, it's an important thing. It's when God makes himself present and you feel God's presence, whether that be awakening or conviction to grow in one's faith, or an inspiration to be moved to do something. These are all ways that Ignatius describes that God can move in the soul to make himself present. And the most important thing with consolation is then that we know that God is really with us when we feel the consolation. Consolations are an encouragement to keep going forward. It's like the lighthouse on the sea that shows you, not the lighthouse. I guess the lighthouse would keep you from crashing into the rocks, but I suppose that could work as well, especially for the next rule. But maybe rather it's the light that cuts through the darkness of a cave, and allows you to see the way out and see the way forward up to where you need to go. So thanks for listening. If you like this video, please please subscribe to our channel. You feel free to comment at the bottom. People have been pretty shy to do that thus far. You can ask questions in the comment section. I'd be happy to answer them. That's kind of what the comment section is for. Or like the video, okay? So we'll try to post another video tomorrow. God bless.